everyone, I'm Kristen Messerly here interviewing today Travis Brooks, who is a real estate agent in Tampa and president of NAREB in the Tampa area. So I was on a panel recently with Travis where we were talking about partnerships and how to better serve the communities that we're in through those partnerships. And Travis just had some amazing insights, and I wanted to bring that conversation more broadly publicly. So Travis, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So to just kick us off and go deep right away, I wanted to get into some of your thoughts on, we've talked about continually how Black homeownership the homeownership rates have continued to stay significantly lower, 30% lower than white homeownership rates, and would love to hear your thoughts on how the pandemic has influenced that and where we can see that having an impact in the future as well.
Well, if you want to specifically speak about the pandemic, I got to go a little bit broader than the pandemic, because even pre-pandemic, one of our biggest issues have been down payment assistance or saving for a down payment for properties, and our credit score criteria, which are typically lower than our counterparts. So when you're looking at a pandemic that saw record numbers in individuals out of work, record numbers of individuals that could not afford to pay their current mortgage, we were not able to recover. Just like the recession we had in 2009, 10, and 11, our recovery period was much slower than everyone else. When the home bust started going back up again around 11, 12, and 13, when everyone else were purchasing homes, we were still not able to recover because we just not financially able to. We're looking at traditionally, we're about 10% of the average household income. So if our average white household is making $17,000 a year, we're probably making $1,700 a year. That's just the rule of thumb that's been going on. And so until we're able to close that wealth gap, we're going to continue to see a downward spiral, or if not a downward spiral, we're going to continue to be in last place when it comes to home ownership rate.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all of those barriers and challenges in place, what do you think has in the past, we can get into the pandemic after this, but what do you feel needs to happen in order to begin closing the gap in some ways?
For me, it's simple. It's policy. It's policy. Policy was put in place to stop us from being able to purchase homes. So policy has to be put in place to put us in positions to purchase homes. It wasn't until the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968 that stopped the discrimination of where we can and can't live. But pre-1968, it was intentional to hold us back and stop us from purchasing homes. It's no secret. Home buying or home ownership is the key to creating generational wealth. Home ownership and through insurance policy. So if we can stop you from owning land, which to me, and as Malcolm said, at the basis of all independence, freedom, and justice, for it is on land that a people build a nation. If you can stop a segment of people from owning land, we can stop them from creating wealth. So if the policies were put in place either through the New Deal or the Fair Housing Act, through redlining, if those are put in place to keep us down, and I think we could put policy in place to move us forward and come more home buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. Are there any policies in mind that you think are particularly, areas that we should be advocating for?
For me, I go back to the CRA Act of 1977, which is the Community Revitalization Act. It was designed for lenders to create programs to serve the communities that they're in. So if I have a bank in a lower to moderate income area, then I cannot give them the same standard that I would if my bank is in a more affluent area. So we got to understand and be intentional that the playing field isn't level. Right. So if you're going to hold us to the same standards, we're never going to get there. So I think we need to hold banks accountable to that CRA Act that they've signed and make sure that they are creating and deriving programs that will help that low to moderate income family. And not to say that all African Americans are low to moderate income, but if we're going to look at sheer numbers, our net worth is a lot lower than the majority of those in this country. So we have to create programs and design credit score criteria that may be a little different than the average person to help us give us a leg up in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah, so good. So circling back to the pandemic, are you, especially, working in the field, are you aware of how the pandemic is impacting communities of color specifically, and how, what we can see from that in the future?
Well, honestly, in the pandemic, I'm a real estate broker, and most of my counterparts, we have been probably more busy than ever during this pandemic. One, because interest rates are at a historic low,
Mhm.
interest rate at all-time low, and our inventory is low. I think that when the pandemic hit, we normally get an influx of properties to hit the market around late spring, early summer, but most individuals did not want people inside their homes, so we didn't get a lot of inventory, but those interest rates stayed low. So I would say, looking at the between the first quarter of 2019 and was at 40.6% home ownership rate, and the first to second quarter of 2020 we went up to 47%, and we're still holding steady right there. So I don't think the pandemic has necessarily dropped us in the home ownership rate, because we're out there purchasing, and we're able to purchase because we're able to afford the homes, because you're getting a 2.875 or 2.75 interest rate versus a 4.5 to 5% interest rate would have put us outside of that debt to income ratio.
Gosh, that is fascinating. So I was thinking that you know, with the pandemic, everyone's seen a huge influx of homeownership. But some of the research that I've done, and I recently did a webinar on closing the housing divide, and how predominantly the frontline workers were predominantly from communities of color, and getting disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, especially in low to moderate income neighborhoods. And there is a correlation between healthy housing and healthy bodies. And so, seeing some of that has, you would see that would potentially decrease the homeownership rate. But it's amazing to see that across the board. I mean, we've seen that in every race and background, that people have wanted to buy more homes in the pandemic because they're spending more time, they want more space. They also are able to take advantage of low interest rates. So that's great to hear. That I didn't even know that the homeownership rate had increased in Black and African American communities currently. So do you think that will continue to stay there as long as we're able to continue to promote homeownership, or do you think with the rise in interest rates that it's going to go back to where we were before?
Well, with rising interest rates, that will affect us a little bit, because again, it affects our debt to income ratio. Traditionally, we have lower income, so a lower income, we need those interest rates to put us in that small window that we can purchase. So as the interest rate rise, I think all across the board will see a impact, but we'll see a more impact than everyone else because of our buying power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, any takeaways? I know that, one area that we're focused on here is policy. Is there anything on a day-to-day level other than advocacy that we can do to better support maintaining an increase in homeownership rate in Black and African American communities, and, promote overall in this industry?
Well, again, I'll say this time and time again. Number one is the advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is the policy. And real quick, I'll go back to, I think it was 2013, when FHA changed the rule to where no matter where you are in your college status, 1% of your student loan debt will be added to your debt. So fact of the matter is, minorities are the ones with the more student loan debt.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're coming out of college with $80,000 worth of debt, automatically we have $800 that's going to be added to our monthly debt, even though our payment may only be $200. Mm-hmm. That policy alone stopped a lot of individuals from being able to purchase. I think that's the first policy that needs to be changed. If you're in deferment, or if you have a payment of $80, then that needs to be what we use for determining your home buying process, not the 1% of your student loan debt. That policy, again, affected minorities more than anyone else. And after advocacy, on the broader scale, it's the local level, it's the education. It's the education of the individuals in the community to say you can own a home. We've been psychologically made to think that, hey, home ownership is so far away, it's so out there, because we don't have the credit score. I'm only making $15 an hour. There's no way I can own a home. But we have to do more educating and getting that information out to the individuals in the community. Say, if you want to own a home, we have programs in place because we have intentionally held those banks and those lending institutions to the fire to put programs in place. The builders, when you're talking about the low to moderate income areas, we're bringing builders in that should be building products to fit the average median income of that area. Mm-hmm. If the average median income is only of a certain number, we can't put $300,000-$400,000 in it, $1,000 homes in that area, because those individuals won't be able to stay there long. You're going to tax them out of their home neighborhood that they grew up in. So it has to be an intentional effort from the top to the bottom, from the policy, from the banks, from individuals like NAREB, and what we do as far as advocacy and education. But education and advocacy are number 1 and 2 on my list.
Absolutely. That's so good. Before starting my business, I was a social worker working predominantly in immigrant communities, but also communities of color, doing a lot of education. And I just think that while it seems like a much longer play to be investing in education, if someone's not quite ready to buy, for so many people, they were actually ready and just weren't aware that they, could qualify, or that it would take 6 months to a year to be able to qualify. But also, I think investing in education just around financial literacy overall allows you to be set up as a resource when it comes to building wealth, and can create a lot of business longer term. So that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. You had incredible insights, and I'm excited to share this with our community as well.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it. And I'm here anytime.
Thank you.